Hi, today I'll be doing an unboxing and first look at a Chenbro RM 2300F computer enclosure. This is a rack mount enclosure. Its claims to fame, as it were, are that it's inexpensive. It's only supposed to be 17 inches deep, and it seems fairly well reviewed. Initially, even purchasing it, my misgivings are that they didn't. Apparently, they don't paint the entire chassis, and so I'm probably going to be doing a little modding on this, and I'll probably be painting it. And but hopefully everything else is as I want it to be. First off, the box is actually larger than I thought it would be. It's actually 22 inches or 56 centimeters by 23 and a half or 60 centimeters by 11 and a half inches, which is roughly 29 centimeters. So it's a pretty big box. It seemed to arrive in fairly good condition. There is a handle on one side. It's just standard double-walled cardboard. I wish there was even an option to have thicker cardboard, that 4-ply cardboard. The box is so big it actually gets outside my lighting solution, but as soon as I get out of the box, I'm hoping the lighting will be a little bit better. And apparently they've got some advertising, or looks like for their accessories and stuff that you can outfit their chassis with on the inside lid. And inside we have a box. We have this little box for accessories, which has packages. We've got a little bags of screws with standoffs and such things. And a little block-off plate of some kind. I don't know. I think it's a block-off plate anyhow. And a couple of zip ties. I don't exactly know what that does. It looks like there could have been more accessories there, but there's not. Inside we have the case. And actually I like this foam. This is likely polyethylene foam. And this stuff is good. It's not the breaky styrofoam. Let's put that aside. This barely fits on my bench. And everything seems really well packed, so I would actually be surprised if the case itself is damaged. The case itself is wrapped with fairly heavy plastic, which is nice. I don't mind one layer of plastic. I've taken the case out of the bag and I put it on the bench on a block to get a little light on it, because this is still out of my lighting solution apparently. Maybe I need more lights back farther. Initially, well, the handles seem comfortable. They seem fairly strong. The kind of thing, I've actually carried this into the house for a minute to show my roommate, but once it's built, I don't recommend carrying it by just one handle, or even maybe two handles. I think you can pull it out of a rack with the handles, but they still seem pretty sturdy. On the front, you've got a reset switch with a little rubber thing around it, so that makes it hard to press, and I like that. That's nice. Oddly, the power on-off switch is actually a rocker switch, which is, I find, strange. People say the switch feels cheap. I don't see that. The USB connectors in front are white and not blue. That doesn't mean either way whether it can handle USB 3.0 speeds. After they painted it, apparently it looks like they actually pasted on this little face thing that's actually screen printed or pad printed in front for the little light guides for the LEDs, or those just might actually be the LEDs. I can't tell until I get it open. Apparently you've got a thin line CD-ROM space here. You've got 3 open bays here. There's a 120 millimeter fan here, and you've got 2. These are some kind of. I don't know how accessible this is, but I want to think that I can put a 3.5 inch drive in here. But I'm not gonna hold my breath until I get it open. The one thing I was playing around with, apparently, there's 2 captive screws here. Let's see if any of this is coming up on camera. There's 2 captive screws here, and then this whole unit pulls out with the fan, like so. And the filter's sandwiched in between here somewhere. And they claim that the fan is ball bearing, which is kind of nice. I may or may not change the fan. I'm actually there's one brand of fans I usually use, and I might change it. I might not. But it's if it's ball bearing, well, that's a good sign for reliability. And you know, they could have put some sleeve bearing fan in there. And as we're already seeing that the inside of the case is not painted, which is, I don't know, which actually is kind of funny because there's actually let's see if I can get this back in here like this. Like apparently this is a little fiddly as far as the wires. I think I hooked the wires here somewhere. And that just kind of hooks under here, and that presses in here, and then the screws, the captive screws tighten. Bottom of the case is largely flat. There's two strengthening grips here. There's a depression to strengthen the power supply area here. There's lots of standoff little pressed in or welded in little standoff things here. Apparently, I could take this CD-ROM cage off of the miniature slimline CD-ROM cage could be taken off by removing these screws from the bottom. I don't know if I'm going to do that. I might not. The sides of the cases have the same little tiny screws for the top. Actually, there's only one in front, oddly enough. You can see that the handles here are actually apparently removable. Nice heavy screws on this. Nice, actually chrome-plated screws. There's actually an indication here telling me to remove this with a screwdriver. So maybe that's how the hard drive cage comes out. There's some stiffening ribs here. Stamped into the case, and it looks like you've got some threaded rail mounts if you actually do mount it in a rack, a deep rack, instead of just like a portable case like I'm likely to. The back of the case seems very well ventilated. It looks like there's just space here for two 80mm fans. I like that there's hardly any metal here. I like that because it makes it quieter and it makes it cool. They ventilated this really nice. This is the kind of touch I like. They ventilated these a little bit better than it looks like in the picture. Once again, I wish all this was painted or powder coated, preferably. We still have some, it looks like we have got some DB9 or DB15 plugs, knockouts here. And it looks like, these look like eSATA, or they might be one of the, maybe a SAS connector, places. I've never dealt with SAS, so I wouldn't know about that, but they might be that. You've got a removable power supply plate in here. The metal in the case, it's adequate. It's adequate. It's not, I don't know if I would have wanted a lot heavier than that. We have this nice tinny sound here, and I might put sound deadening in the case because I also do audio stuff. The top of the case is actually covered with a thin protective sheet, and before I paint, I'll have to remember to take that off, because otherwise it'll get pretty weird. And there's little tiny screws. I wish these screws were actually larger. I don't know how much thread is actually pushed into the case, or if there's any kind of standoffs in here, but this might be a weakness in the case. I wish these were a little stouter. These are actually mount flush too. Apparently the back plane is actually to some degree removable. Hypothetically, you could take this out to mod it. And I imagine this case has different backs to it. There were only 4 tiny screws going around the perimeter to hold the lid on the case, which I find underwhelming. I like this little cutout here. It reminds me actually of some Dells. Let's see what we have here. The cover, it's not too flimsy. They could have stamped something on the side of it. Apparently they have an instruction sheet here. For most applications, for, thinking about this would be in a server room, that this would be really handy to have this. This is a good feature for most people. Myself, I'm going to probably take this off and probably put some sound deadening material in strategic places. 2 posts here that slide into little tabs or little slots in the front of the case to hold it. Clamping arrangement for long and heavy video cards, and apparently you loosen up these screws and there's a little finger, you can see it actually as it goes down, descends, And that goes, and there's an interesting kind of knee arrangement in here. Probably can't see it. But then you tighten this up, and it'll keep the cards from falling out of the bus slots, which I always thought were remarkable that nobody ever came up with a better arrangement than that. This seems removable. It seems fairly high up in the case. Could be a hair stronger. This is actually the card holder removed, and I wanted to give you a better view out of it. You loosen up these screws, and there's these little kind of knee action slidey things, which seemed cool. I like this. This is nice. Here we can see there's a little micro switch for some kind of case open alarm, and maybe to shut the computer off if it's on or something like that, as if you can get it out of the rack without worrying about power. I don't know if I'll be using that. I'll probably just tie it up. There's 2 screws on this side to take out the CD-ROM hard drive cage. The one on this side is very close to the handle, but apparently we can just barely sneak it out. And once again, the screws on this are kind of underwhelming. There's probably like maybe 2 threads holding it on, but this is built to a price. I'm going to try taking out these 2 screws to remove this hard drive CD-ROM cage. And once again, all these screws are really tiny, which I wish they were a little bit stouter. And the cage comes out like that. And it's basically just stamp steel. Apparently you can mount a hard drive down here at the bottom, which is nice. There's, let's see if I can get this in the light. There are rubber grommets on the top and bottom. And they have some give to them, so they should be able to absorb some sound. There are some instructions here stamped out in English. So that came out nice. There's hard drive cage, and it looks like it has a place for an optional fan in front. And once again, it's take out two tiny little screws. It's kind of clever how they did this. There's grommets on the bottom. There's 4 grommets that slide it from the side, and that goes down on these little locating pins, which are actually conical at the top. So that's pretty nice. The center hard drive cage has a cutout for an 80mm fan. I know my camera doesn't have enough dynamic range for this, but viewed from the top, the fan cage comes out like this, and it's a nice little unit. Let's see if we can make sure it's in focus. And if this is really a ball bearing fan, that's pretty neat. And if we flip it over, there's a little filter that comes out here, and the filter seems sturdy. I like that. Filter's nice. And there's a little groove in here so you can get it out. I dropped this the first time. I wish there was something to hold it in while you're working on it. A little clip. For some unknown reason, there's actually 2 standoffs pre-installed in the case, but the others aren't. On the top, the sides, and I believe this side, the fan cage is removable like this. It's got this little cover actually attached to it. I guess this is the only way to take this out. This actually looks good. And you know, they try to make this strong by pressing this out like this. They try to round up the corners by pressing it that way. I think you can actually mount a hard drive in here with some kind of bracket, and which is probably not included. There's actually posts here for their custom solution, which is not included in the box. Look at their little cable management thing for the front panel lights. I wish these were more easily removable. What they did was, this panel is removable, but in order to remove that, you'd have to spoil the plastic applique sticker kind of thing they put on the front with all the legends on it. And you've got the standard fair wires. These USB seems to be grouped together. The rest seems separate. However, for the moment, I don't see the second USB. They've got the USB in front. Both connectors go to one plug, so they're really using it for a bus. There's a little piece of EM shielding right around the USB, which is nice. I like that. Like a nice Faraday cage, because I do music recording too, and I like an electrically quiet case. I don't want to hear noise when I'm trying to record stuff. I might be able to pop these LEDs out. I'm not sure. Like I said, I want to paint this case. I'm probably not going to be able to paint this unless I mask it really carefully, or just don't care and paint it off. Or alternatively, I might be able to remove this USB cable. I might be able to remove that and mask off the rest of the wires and paint it. This illustrates the front applique quandary. There's a little fastener that goes through the front here, which attaches the slim optical drive. And if I spin the case around, you can see that there's no screw visible here because we have the plastic applique over. So in a way, the vanity bit us. In a way, I would like to just see what's wrong with black screws. They put a little bracket here to support the back of the power supply. It looks actually clips on the back of the power supply while giving it a little standoff from the case. I think they wanted to take pressure off of the, or torque off of the back of the case. There seems to be 3 different settings you can choose. I'm going to be putting a 1050 watt power supply in this, a pretty long one, not the longest. I think the 1200s are still bigger. And we'll see if my power supply can reach this, or alternatively, let's see if I can actually, maybe if I really re-drill some holes here or something. Let's see how this works out. I'll give it a chance. I put feet in this somehow. I may have a little problem next to the power supply because I'll probably have to put a washer in here because this is actually pressed up. I'm not disappointed with the case. The build quality seems pretty good, This is a roughly in US $100 rack mount case, and I feel like it's a $100 rack mount case. It's not spectacular. I think its biggest weaknesses for me are there's not enough of screws to hold the lid on, which actually otherwise provide support for the case. And I wish we had some kind of feet on the bottom. Although this is a rack mount case, if you pull it out of the rack mount, and sometimes things happen, and I think it would increase its usefulness if you could actually just give me 4 plastic feet I can push in there so I can put it down. Myself, I'm going to be using this for basically a crunching server to crunch video, to ray trace, and for music, and also for backups, for storage for backups, and I'll have some storage in there for that. And most of the parts are pretty well made. They made some effort to round the corners and have everything sharp. It's not to say that you couldn't cut yourself in the case. And which brings me to another minor peeve. I like the filter. The filter is nice. The cage the filter goes in is nice, but I wish there was some kind of friction thing to hold the fan in, and this might rattle. So what I might do is I might put a little piece of Velcro here to make sure it doesn't rattle. Like I said, I'm going to be using this for music. I like that these are captive screws. I like that they're black. I wish everything was black. Probably my biggest peeve so far is that everything is black. Sometimes, and actually it makes sense too, because sometimes, depending, I don't know what kind of plating this is, but certain types of plating, like zinc plating, actually grow whiskers, which you can drop into your stuff. And I like a non-conductive interior of the case. If there's a little paint in there, it's a little bit less conductive. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mod this case a little bit. I'm going to put feet in the bottom temporarily. It's probably going to ultimately end up in a rack mount case, but temporarily I'll probably put feet in the case. I'm probably going to strip it down the rest of the way and see if I can get the decal off the inside of the cover. They thoughtfully provided. One of my biggest misgivings are just paint the inside of the case. And in certain environments, I mean, if people don't care about their servers, this might rust after a while. Sometimes the edges of stuff rust, even if they put a heavy coating on it after they stamp it. I don't think they replate this afterwards, so you get little rust here. I don't like that. And But most of the stuff is made nice. I mean, it's built down to a price, but most of the stuff is made nice. I'm pleased with the case. I think it's going to serve my use. I'm going to rebuild with this case. I'm going to basically repackage my computer in this case because I have audio stuff and if I have horizontal stuff and perpendicular stuff that makes storage harder.